Do you realize the Christian faith is the only faith that talks about redemption? Not just forgiveness, redemption. The redemption that comes because of the grace of Christ. Oh, other religions talk about the longing for it, the hope for it, never ever any provision for it. The condition, the provision. Thirdly and quickly, his equipment in suffering. The depravity of man is at the same time the most empirically verifiable fact, even as it is the most intellectually resisted. At the same time, it is the most empirically verifiable fact. You see it all around. It can easily be verified, but at the same time, it is the most intellectually resisted. We like to talk ourselves into believing that man is basically good. Oh yeah, there may be many good things we do, but deep inside, look at the world today. Why is it in the catastrophic mess that it is, fiscally, morally, socially, academically, in every sense of the term? We talk about the fiscal cliff. We're at the precipitous edge of civilization's self-decimation. We just can't come to terms with how we sit across a table and in cordiality discuss differences and solve our problems. Reason, the heart of man is desperately wicked. I see it again and again and again. The description of the human condition. If you walk into Auschwitz today, better be prepared for the most shocking things you'll ever see. One of the most deadly of all death camps under the Nazi regime in Poland. It changed my life. I was in my 20s in my undergraduate work in Toronto when I was invited to go to Vietnam. And I'll never forget the sights I saw and all that was going on with geopolitical maneuverings at that time. And I thought to myself, is this our answer? Is this the best answer we really have for our issues? Burning each other up, slaughtering each other. Some hospitals were so full that unless you had burns in your body, they were putting 2 soldiers to each bed. That's what the human condition is like. Now, our mistake is thinking that that is the extreme. We never get there. But the reality is, Jesus said, a sin in your life and sin in mine. I don't know if I have that quotation here. Yes, I do. Here it is. Hobart Maurer, the great psychologist who was an atheist who committed suicide at the age of, I think he was in his 70s or something when he committed suicide. He was 75 years old. One-time professor at Harvard, one-time professor at Yale, president of the American Psychological Association. He wrote this article in the American Psychologist, and he said this. He said he never received more hate mail than after he wrote this article, even though he was a skeptic himself. He said, for several decades, we psychologists have looked upon the whole matter of sin and moral accountability as a great incubus, and acclaimed our liberation from sin as epoch-making. See what he's saying? When we no longer were allowed to use the word sin, we considered it so liberating, it was epoch-making. But at length we have discovered that to be free from sin, to have the excuse of being sick rather than being sinful, is to also court the danger of becoming lost. This danger is, I believe, betokened by the widespread interest in existentialism, which we are presently witnessing. In becoming amoral, ethically neutral, and free, we have cut the very roots of our being, lost our deepest sense of selfhood and identity, and with neurotics now themselves, we find ourselves asking, who am I? What is my deepest destiny? What does living really mean? And then he ends with the Anna Russell psychiatric folk song. At 3, I had a feeling of ambivalence towards my brothers, and so it follows naturally I poisoned all my lovers. And now I'm happy I have learned the lesson this has taught, that everything I do that's wrong is someone else's fault. When we thought we were liberated from it, we're sick, not really being sinful. It was a landmark in psychological theory. He said, what's happened as a result, we've lost the definition of who we really are. The Bible is very clear. Your heart, my heart, is desperately wicked. But what's the remedy for it? In the Judeo-Christian faith, the only answer ever given that I think meets meaningfully is what Christ provided for you and for me in the cross. If you follow the Islamic faith and you ask a Muslim man, how do you attain paradise? He'll say, when you stand before Allah, your good deeds will have to outweigh your bad deeds. That's how you're going to make it. In fact, a few years ago, I was at Toowoomba at the University of South Queensland, and I was debating an atheist and an Islamic scholar. He said that right from the platform. When I put him the question, how do you attain paradise? Your good deeds will have to outweigh your bad deeds. You ask anybody from the pantheistic worldview, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and so on, every birth is a rebirth, every life pays for the previous life. When you finally attain that karmic victory of attaining perfection and paying for everyone, every previous birth, then you attain nirvana or moksha, whatever it is. In other words, you're paying all the way through. You incur a debt with each birth, and you pay for that debt with each rebirth. And the marvelous thing about the Christian worldview is you can never earn the right to really be embraced by God. It is His gift to you. It is the provision on the cross. And so you're waiting till you're all right and all cleaned up. You're coming the wrong way. You come as dirty as you are. He's the only one who can clean you up. The time I was in Jerusalem, part of a small delegation with the Archbishop of Canterbury, the former Archbishop George Carey. He'd taken the 5 of us to discuss mediation approaches with the Jewish leaders, Palestinian leaders, especially the religious leaders. And on the last day, we were with one of the 4 founders of Hamas. His name was Sheikh Talal. Sheikh Talal's a pretty solidly built guy. Spent 18 years in prison, lost several of his children in suicide bombings. We'd spent about 3 some hours there, had a long discussion. He gave us a great lunch, and now the intensity begins in the dialogue, and he's just clenching his fists, and we're just sitting back and listening to all the venom and all the anger. And as it's coming to an end, the Archbishop looks at the 5 of us and says, if you men want to ask him one question each, keep it brief, and then we'll move on from here. So my turn came. I looked at him. I asked Sheikh Talal a question. I won't tell you what question I asked. But he gave me the answer, and I looked at him. I said, Sheikh, you and I may never see each other again, but I really don't like your answer. I said, I have to tell you that. And I said, I'll tell you why. I said, we're sitting here in Ramallah. I said, not far from here is a mountain. Not far from here. 5,000 years ago, a man you and I respect by the name of Abraham took his son up that mountain to offer his son as a sacrifice before God to demonstrate his faith. Do you remember the story? He said, yes. I said, let's not discuss which son it was. Let's just agree it was his son. He said, yes. I said, and as the axe is about to come down, God stops the arm of Abraham. You remember that story? He said, yes. I said, what did God say? He couldn't remember. I said, God said, stop. I myself will provide. He said, that's right. I said, Sheikh, stone's throw from where you and I are sitting is a hill. It's called Calvary. I said, 2,000 years ago, God kept that promise and took his own son up that hill. I said, Sheikh Talal, this time the axe did not stop. God himself provided. He's just staring at me. I said, I want to say to you this, sir. Until you and I receive the son God has provided, we'll be offering our own sons and daughters on the battlefields of this world for position, land, power, and prestige. There's been dropped silence in the room. Do you realize the Christian faith is the only faith that talks about redemption? Not just forgiveness, redemption. The redemption that comes because of the grace of Christ. Oh, other religions talk about the longing for it, the hope for it, never ever any provision for it. The condition, the provision. Thirdly and quickly, his equipment in suffering.